might want to look into that. It's good stuff. Had trouble following what was happening. Transportation infrastructure is very interesting to me. Hi, I'm Sock Marionette, doing business as Bargain Counter Argument, and I'm a middle-aged lady in a tiara talking about books. And today is errand day. And as errand days go, it was kind of BS because Mom Marionette wanted to go to a new Turkish market the next town north of us. We've been there before, we got some nice stuff, and they started offering takeout. So we wanted to go up there and get some stuff for the pantry and for the freezer, and also get some takeout. And normally that would be like a 10-15 minute drive up there and back again, and it would be no problem, but we got stuck in a traffic jam. And at one point we were sitting next to a speed limit sign that told us the speed limit was 45 miles per hour, and I was like more like 4.5 miles per hour, which I think was actually true because it took us about a half an hour just to go like 2 miles. And there was a butterfly fluttering attractively amongst the roadside plants. It was going faster than we were. It passed me on the right. But that's over with. We did get some nice food. We got some stuff, and we got it home, and we had some of the takeout. I bought a lot. We got a lot, so we didn't eat all of it. So good. If you have an opportunity to try some Turkish food or some Turkish recipes, really good stuff. Eastern Mediterranean, so it uses a lot of the similar ingredients to like other Mediterranean cuisine. So it's, if you like the Mediterranean diet, you might want to look into that. It's good stuff. Anyway, so we had that. It was really good. And now the next errand I want to do is just to take some books back to the library, which means the library on Hull, which you probably didn't need that rambling intro for that because it's going to be in the title of the video. So let's see. I have 9 books to return, and then I really will be at Library Checkout Zero again, which I made a big deal out of it a few weeks ago. I did like the clearing the decks. I did a video, I'll link it in the description. It was a vlog where I was like reading all my library books to get down to Library Checkout Zero, and I did that, and it was great, and I was proud of myself. And then like a week or so later, I went to the library and got more stuff. So yeah, I have 9 books to talk about today, and I'm going to start with the DNFs. There were 3 DNFs, so that wasn't great, but the rest of the books I really enjoyed. And so I'm going to start with the DNFs, and I'm going to move on to general fiction. Then I have like a mystery, I don't know if I'd call it a thriller, but it's a mystery, and then I'll move on to the romances, including a romantic suspense title. Now, as I said, there were 3 DNFs, and this one, they're Campfire Romance by Shannon Stacy. I keep wanting to call her Stacy Shannon because that's an equally lovely name, and it is about this couple. It is part of her series called The Kowalskis. It's about a family of people with the surname of Kowalski. Stella! I can't resist. And the Kowalski brothers are... They bought a campground, and they're bringing it back, like kind of back to its glory days. And so each brother gets a romance, and now we're on, which one is this? Danny. Danny is a writer, and actually his contribution to the project was mostly financing. And he does do some, the rest are doing like sweat equity and actually running the place. Now he does do some work around the campground when you know he wants to or when it's necessary. So he's not totally hands off, but he's kind of like the silent partner. He doesn't tell them what to do just because he ponied up the dough. And Kenzie, so yeah, he is, this dude, and she's into him because he's new, and he's going to be on the new shelf until November of 2026. So she's into him unless she's looking over his shoulder to like December 2026 or even January 2027. Anyway, her name is Kenzie, and she's a waitress in town, and... well, actually, she's a waitress. She kind of manages, she co-owns the diner with her dad who does the cooking. She actually does all of the administrative work and the serving and the promotion and all of that. She would have rather have done some other things, but her mom died, and so she is in this town, a small town in New Hampshire. And there's lovely descriptions of New Hampshire, which is a beautiful part of the country. I've been there. I really like it there. But the book itself was kind of meh. It was like, yeah, it seemed, I got halfway through it and I made the mistake of getting up to refresh my beverage. And when I came back, I picked it up and I was like, yeah, I'm not into this. It was like, at that point, I felt like the major conflict had already been resolved. And I was like, only halfway through the book, I was like, I think this book maybe they were going to introduce another major conflict, but I knew what was left to resolve. Not everything had been resolved, so I knew what was left that needed to be resolved, but it didn't seem like it was going to take half the book to do it, and I was like, you know what, I'm just not that into it. It was because I did enjoy the descriptions of the scenery and the town. That was fun, but the rest of it was just, for me, it was kind of meh. It wasn't bad or anything, I just didn't care. And I had The Language of Liars. Again, this is another one I made it halfway through, by S.L. Huang, and this is short. It's only 155 pages. It's science fiction, and it is about a kind of interconnected series of planets and solar systems. No humans are in this. It's just different sentient species scattered across some region of the galaxy. And we have, some of them are telepathic, and we have this character who is studying languages and modes of communication, including telepathy, because he wants to be able to get into the mind of another species, and they are the species that does the mining, because they're the only species that can mine a certain element, mine and process a certain element that everybody needs for energy purposes to run their economies and their societies. And the question is, this species was previously either indentured or enslaved, I'm not entirely sure, and supposedly they're not anymore, but and I think there's a lot of interesting ideas in here. There are a lot of interesting ideas in here about language and communication and exploitation of labor and so on. But it was just such a slog to read. Even at 155 pages, I gave up halfway through. So it could have been good, but it wasn't. And then finally, one that I DNF'd for, I think, a reason that actually reflects well on the book and the writer, and that is the Book of Luke, and it's by Lovell or Lavelle, I'm not sure how he pronounces it, Holder, and it's his first book. He's a filmmaker. It's a reality show setting, and it's about this guy who was on a reality show, and he kind of ended up being the villain, and he came back a few times because it was one of those reality shows that recycles the cast. He came back several times, and then he retired because he married another contestant from that show who is America's first, or I think he's America's only openly gay senator, because I guess Tammy Baldwin doesn't exist in this universe. And so they're married, and then the senator cheats on the main character, Luke. Luke's the main character, not the senator. He cheats on him, and it's pretty flagrant, and Luke wants to get a divorce, and there's like a whole custody thing. Luke doesn't have any money because he's been staying at home with the kids while his husband serves in the Senate, and so he goes back on the reality show for a reunion because he needs the money, firstly to pay his attorneys, and also to show that he can financially take care of the kids. And he goes back, and there's a reunion, and some weird stuff happened in his first season on the show, and there are all of these relationships, friendships, and so on, and like I said, a big mystery and everything, and it's really, really good. I was really, really liking it. However, this is where Lovell Holder was just too good at his job as a writer, because this reality show setting, and I don't watch reality shows, and I've read books with reality show settings, but those reality show settings were kind of it was either the gameplay for the reality show was really simple and easy to follow, or it really wasn't that relevant to the interactions of the characters. It was just kind of like a backdrop. This one, the reality show setting, is so integrated into the plot that I had trouble following what was happening on the reality show. And so the fact that it was affecting everybody's relationships and everything was very cool, but I was just very, very confused. So that's me as a reader not being familiar with a lot of tropes from reality shows. And like I said, I think it's just an interesting reason to have to finish a book because it was too good. Anyway, so if you're into reality shows, this might be for you. Because, I'm looking forward to what he writes next, because I'm like, he's a good writer, and it was all very engaging. I was just too confused by the setting. So moving on. So those are the books I didn't finish, and I did read at least halfway through all of them. Okay, now we're moving on to a sort of literary fiction, Crescendo by Jane Healey. And this is about a child prodigy pianist. And he's a child prodigy. He started giving concerts at a very young age, and he's kind of internationally a superstar. And he's only 20 years old, and he starts kind of making mistakes. as he's playing the piano for these concerts. So he needs to kind of step back and figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, he's got a twin sister, and she's his manager because their mom was really flaky. And this is kind of, she was really sophisticated and really good at being his manager. And it was like, I felt like maybe she was too good for a 20-year-old, but maybe that was part of the issue. I'm not sure. But what happens is they both end up going to Paris so that he can study with this teacher who he thinks that this teacher's going to help him get out of whatever it is that's bothering him. And a very wealthy patron of the arts invites them to stay with him in his very lavish house in Paris. And he's kind of like having an affair with both of them at the same time. And there's this weird like sibling rivalry and so on. It is not a particularly plotty book. There's not a lot of plot. It's really much more character study. And it's, I think, about 300 pages or so, which... yeah, it's about 300 pages, which is about as much as that kind of character study could sustain. So I really enjoyed this book, so I like that. I forgot to mention, and I'm going to put this in the title or the description, that these are all new releases. All of the books I've discussed so far have been released in 2026, except for The Killer Question by Janice Hallett. I got this off the new shelf because this is the large print edition, and I guess that was just the library had acquired it a little later because this is copyright 2025. This is the only book I have that wasn't published this year. And this is Killer Question, Janice Hallett, and it's a mystery. And like her other books, it's told kind of through reports, police reports, emails, text threads, that kind of thing. I do enjoy reading her works that way. I like all those books that have that kind of what do they call it, multimedia approach. And like here you've got a text thread, and most of it's text thread. And let's see what we have here. There's an email. I really liked it. I felt like it did drag a little bit in the middle. Oh, I forgot to give my star ratings. This book I gave 4 stars. This one I also gave 4 stars. There was a bit that dragged in the middle a little bit, which is unusual for Janice Hallett. She usually moves along really fast. I feel like there were maybe a few things that could have been streamlined a little bit, but I still enjoyed it. I have yet to be disappointed by a book she's written that I've read. And next up, The Romantic Suspense. It's historical romantic suspense by Catherine Coulter. The Heir of Whitestone, or possibly it might be pronounced Whitstone, because that's how sometimes that goes. And it is set in the Victorian era. There's a lot of stuff about trains, which is fun for me because transportation infrastructure is very interesting to me. But even if you're not interested in transportation infrastructure, it doesn't take over the whole book. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it. There's a cameo from one of the Sherbrooks from the books she wrote in the 90s, I think. And I liked it. It was like, I think it was a 3.25 for me. It was a fun afternoon, but some of the writing, the plotting, and some of the writing was like a little slapdash. And so that's why I knocked off like half a point or so for that. And now the contemporary romances. I read The Great Outdoors by Kayla Olson, which is about a woman who is kind of very schedule-oriented, very detail-oriented. She always likes to know what's happening and what's going to happen. She likes to be prepared for all contingencies. And her boyfriend breaks up with her because he says she's just not spontaneous enough. And she had been planning this elaborate trip to the Amalfi Coast that they were going to go on. And he's like, no, I want to go hiking in the Sierra Nevada, and I figure you don't want to do that, so I'm breaking up with you. And she's like, well, wait a minute. So she decides she's going to go on this trip. And she books the trip and everything, and then she finds out that the boyfriend's not even going. She's like, well, I still want to prove to myself and to anybody else who asks that I am capable of getting into a situation where I don't have control over every single aspect and I don't have a bunch of contingency plans. And so she is also a person who doesn't really have a face. And then we have this dude who also doesn't have a face but does have some stubble. And he is the guide on this. And so they kind of have some interactions, and they're kind of feeling a little bit of a spark. But of course, because he's a guide and she's part of the trek, a paying client on the trek, it's kind of iffy about whether or not they should get involved. And a lot of stuff happens where she doesn't have control over the situation, and it's kind of like, can she step up is the question she's asking herself, and the book answers it. I really like this one. I would say 4.25, pretty good. And let's see, The Missed Connection by Tia Williams. And this is about a woman who is on a flight. She gets bumped up to first class, and she and her seatmate kind of have a platonic and emotional connection, but they're both like drinking champagne, and she takes a tranquilizer because she's really afraid of flying. And during this flight from New York to Paris, they talk about all kinds of things. They get along so well, but they don't actually get around to exchanging any kind of contact information or even names. So when she gets to Paris, she gets to her hotel room, and just before she just like falls asleep for 12 hours because of the trip and everything, she sends an email to a colleague saying, "Oh, I think I met my soulmate, but I didn't get his contact information." And then she wakes up the next morning to all of these messages, because it turns out that the email, she accidentally sent it company-wide. And everybody in the company, this is like an international company, so you got people all over the world who are trying to figure out who this guy was and how can they make this connection happen. And she kind of just starts ignoring all of that. So she goes home and she hires a detective that she had worked with a few years previously, and so she hires him to find this guy. And maybe the missed connection wasn't with the seatmate. Maybe it was with this private detective, who has actually retired from being a private detective. It's really good. The characters are very messy. So, and also she has PTSD because the problem he helped her with before, and this is a little bit of a spoiler. So if you don't want a spoiler, then just skip ahead or mute me until I put the book down. She had a stalker, and so she has PTSD from that. So if that's an issue that has affected you or someone you care about and you don't want to deal with it in your light fiction, then, proceed with caution. Spoiler done. Finally, the last book is Tropesick by Lauren Oakey. And you can see these are all tropes that are in this book. Forced proximity, grumpy sunshine, brother's best friend, and girl next door. And what happened is he was her brother's best friend when she was growing up. He and her brother were 2 years older than she was. So it's not like a scandalous age difference. And her brother was a star baseball player. Like, he was so good that his big concern about going into baseball was, should he go to college first, or should he just directly go into the majors and conduct his career that way? That's how good he was. He didn't, So then something happens, and her brother, you find this out early, her brother dies before he has a chance to either go to college or into the majors. And it destroys her family. And she's moved on with her life. She is now a writer, but she's a ghostwriter. And so she's been hired by the agent of the best-selling romance writer in the world, and she writes these books for this woman who had originally written her own books, but now she hires a ghostwriter. And she usually works with a partner on writing these books, but her writing partner, got a job working for HBO. So they bring in somebody at the last minute, and of course it's the brother's best friend, who has since been to college and become a writer who is looking to publish his first book, which is not romance, it's literary fiction. So she needs to quickly teach him how to write romance. She's like, read these books, and we're going to talk about this, and this is what we do. And he's working on it, and they're working together, and then they get called out to see the writer herself, the person they're ghosting for, out in the Hamptons, and some stuff happens, and I enjoyed it. I would say it's probably 4.5 stars. I will say that the ultimate resolution, not between the two characters, but the overall resolution, I kind of felt like it could have been done a little bit better. And the other thing is, and again, these are kind of spoilery, so if you don't want spoilers, then, just skip ahead to when I put the book down. There is, because the brother, before he died, about 1.5 years or so before he died, he was in he had a career-ending injury. And there ended up being some drug use. There was alcohol, marijuana, and Oxycontin. And like the alcohol, the marijuana, it actually is the kind that becomes problematic. It's not just, oh, you know, they smoke some weed or they drink some wine. It is like actually drug abuse, and the Oxycontin also. So there's drug abuse, there's post-traumatic stress disorder, there's survivor guilt, there's the grief that tears the family apart after the brother dies. So if this is, again, if this is the kind of thing that you don't want to read about in your light fiction, then proceed with caution or skip it. And that's actually the last book that I'm going to be returning today. I'm hoping I can get out of the library without checking out any books, if I can do some impulse control there, because I can't just throw them in the bin, in the drop box and run away, because I need to pick up a book off the hold shelf that for Mom Marionette. So hopefully that's it, and I can start concentrating on the books that I own but haven't yet read, including the next vlog is probably going to be Sister Picks My TBR, because I got my sister to go through my owned but unread shelves on Goodreads and pick out some books for me to enjoy next. So that should be the next vlog. I might be doing some more tags in the meantime. The vlog, I don't know when I'm going to start it. I'm probably going to start the vlog pretty soon, but it's probably not going to be finished until like the end of the month, because there are a few books to read and I have other things I want to read as well. So I'm going to do that. I'd like to get that posted by the end of the month. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, so if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, or don't. I am not the boss of you, but I am the boss of my library checkouts, and I hope you have a good day or night.